I'd like to call the October 12th, the regular meeting of the City of Post Falls Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Will you please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everyone again. I know it was addressed, but just to touch on it one more time, please make sure that your phone is on silent. And if you do wish to speak tonight in regards to one of the public hearings, make sure that you fill out the paperwork in the back and turn that into Amber. But we will start with roll call.
Hamby. Here. Schlauhauer.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Kimball.
Present.
Carey.
Here.
Stephenson.
Here.
All right, staff, ceremonies, announcements, appointments, and or presentations this evening.
There's none.
Do we have any amendments to the agenda?
There is not.
Commissioners, this time, declaration of conflicts, ex parte contact, or site visits, anything to declare?
No.
Okay, seeing none, then I will move to the consent calendar.
Item A is the minutes from the September 29th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and item B is the zoning recommendation for the Build Right Home zone change, file number RZNE 8/2021.
Everybody had an opportunity to take a look. I would entertain a motion at this time.
I move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
I second.
It's been a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, call for vote.
Stephenson.
Yes.
Carey.
Yes.
Kimball.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Schlauhauer.
Yes.
Hamby.
Yes.
Citizen issues. This section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the commission on an issue that is not on the agenda for this evening. Comments on issues that are planned for future meetings agendas should be held for that meeting. Is there anyone here with general citizen issues that wishes to speak? Okay, seeing none. Unfinished old business.
There's none.
Then that would bring us to the majority of this evening, and that would be our public hearings. Again, if you wish to speak, make sure you fill out the paperwork and turn it in. We will go ahead and get things started and start with Apartment 26 Special Use Permit.
Good evening, Commissioners. Laura Jones, Associate Planner, City of Post Falls, introducing you tonight to the Apartment 26 Special Use Permit. The property owner is 102 Acres, LLC. The applicant is Drew Dittman with Lake City Engineering, and the requested action tonight is special use permit approval to construct 270 multifamily housing units on approximately 15 acres within the Community Commercial Services Zoning District per the high-density multifamily R3 zoning district standards. The property is located east of North Beck Road and south of East Expo Parkway, directly north of I-90, as indicated on the map. The existing zoning of the property is community commercial services, and the majority of the properties around the subject property are also community commercial services. To the north is an R1 zoning Woodbridge South subdivision, and then directly to the west there's some large industrial lots. The applicant is proposing 270 units on 15 acres, which will occur in 2 phases. And it will be roughly 18 dwelling units per acre. As you can see on the bulk and placement table from the Post Falls Municipal Code Title 18, R3 multifamily does allow for up to 18 dwelling units per acre. And the City of Post Falls will provide both water and sewer services. Looking at the future land use map, the future land use designation is business commercial, which promotes a mixture of moderate and high density housing types. Multi-story buildings and a mixture of uses are encouraged, and areas are expected to have a connected grid of streets that facilitate pedestrian access. Looking at the way this area is developing, if you go out there right now, it pretty much looks undeveloped. But we do have permits that are either in review or have already been approved. To the northeast is Crown Enterprises Truck Terminal. That has been approved by site plan review, and if not already under construction, it will occur soon, very shortly, probably this season. To the west is the point at Post Falls. There's 2 large industrial buildings, each roughly 200,000 square feet in size, and the UPS truck terminal. That industrial site is under review currently. And then to the east is the Amelia Apartments, which was approved through special use permit for 420 units. So this site's kind of sandwiched in between that industrial site and the already approved multifamily. Looking at the proposed plan, again, this will occur in 2 phases. Phase 1 is the north side of the site, which is anticipated to have 138 units. And then phase 2 is the southern portion of the site, and it will build out the remaining 132 units. The applicant is proposing 3 different building types, each of them 3 stories in height. So just to give you an idea of the elevations of the building types proposed. They will be similar in architectural style to the Amelia Apartments that are adjacent. Looking at the site amenities, clubhouse, barbecue grills, and picnic tables, a trail system with benches, and a dog park are proposed. The dog park is green on the map on that southern portion, and then the clubhouse is in the blue on the northern portion. The Post Falls Municipal Code requires open space per bedroom count for multifamily sites. For a 1-bedroom unit, we require 150 square feet of open space, and 300 square feet is required for a bedroom count of 2 or more in a unit. So the applicant has proposed 1.67 acres of open space, and based on the calculations for bedroom count, that exceeds what the Title 18 requires. Looking at the 4 review criteria for a special use permit, the first is that implementation of the special use will or will not conform to the purpose of the applicable zoning district. Title 18 of the Post Falls Municipal Code Community Commercial Services Zone. The purpose of the CCS zone is to support a wide array of retail and service uses, including some manufacturing, technical, and other professional uses, as well as multifamily. So it is in line with what the CCS zone allows. Second criteria is whether the proposed use constitutes an allowable special use as established by the chapter for zoning district involved and complies with all other applicable laws, ordinances, and regulations of the city and state. Again, Title 18, the land use table, lists multifamily, which is 3 units or more, as an allowable use in the CCS zone. And additionally, it will be required to meet all local, state, and federal laws, and that includes both building and fire codes, and that's reviewed at the time of site plan review before permits are issued. The third special use permit criteria is whether the proposed use will or will not be compatible with the health, safety, and welfare of the public or with land uses in the vicinity. The proposed use should not negatively impact the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And typically, multifamily sites are developed where they are 2 or 3 stories in height. As I mentioned, the applicant's proposing buildings that are 3 stories in height. This helps to mitigate the impacts of the highway and industrial and commercial uses that are nearby and reduce those impacts from lesser uses, such as the R1 subdivision nearby. Looking at the transportation, the proposed special use is not anticipated to produce impacts that would adversely affect the transportation system. You can see here that Expo Parkway is a major collector and Beck Road is a minor arterial, both which have the capacity to handle the additional traffic flows. Additionally, the site is located close to 2 I-90 interchanges, both the one on Beck Road and the one on North Pleasant View Road. Looking at the last special use criteria, and that is whether the proposed use will or will not comply with the goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan. The applicable goal for a special use permit is Goal 7, and that is to plan for and establish types and quantities of land uses in Post Falls supporting community needs and the city's long-term sustainability. In obtaining that goal, staff looked at Policy 1, which is to support land use patterns that maintain or enhance community levels of service, foster the long-term fiscal health of the community, maintain and enhance residential quality of life, promote compatible, well-designed development, and implement goals and policies of the comprehensive plan, related master plan, and facility plans. So I'll go through each one of those bullet points here. The first, looking at the level of service. This is the Post Falls Parks and Recreation level of service map, and the site is located here in this red box, more specifically about where the cursor is there on the edge of that purple and yellow, which is within the 1 mile service area of Woodbridge Park. However, it has been identified as being below target in the level of service for all types of recreation. To mitigate that, the applicant will be putting those on-site amenities in the open space within the development, and also impact fees that are collected at the time of building permit issuance will also help to mitigate that impact. Next, looking at fostering the long-term fiscal health of the community. It's known that well-situated infill multifamily developments may be more cost-effective and better able to support the full array of local government services than other housing types. And multifamily housing sector is an important niche to sustain right now. Our vacancy rates have been below 1% for quite some time now, so we know that these units are in high demand. Next is looking at maintaining and enhancing residential quality of life. Again, the applicant is required to put in open space and amenities per the Title 18 requirements for multifamily sites. They will also be putting in a 25-foot landscape buffer on the south side of the project along I-90, which is not required by code, but it should help mitigate any impacts to the residents within the multifamily site. And additionally, there will be a 25-foot landscape buffer on the west side of the site between the industrial lot and the multifamily lot. This is required by code for that incompatibility buffer between industrial and residential. It's in proximity to future commercial services and industrial employment centers, and has direct access from that Beck interchange down to the Riverbend industrial area. And again, also close to that Pleasant View interchange. Next is looking at promoting compatible, well-designed development. This site will tie into the Amelia apartment project to the east. It'll be similar in site layout and in architectural style. You can see on this southern portion of the lot, it's a little dim on this screen, but right here, these drive aisles will connect so that they have access to and through both sites. And also fire will have better access to get between sites. Additionally, this will be a good infill for a site that may otherwise be difficult to find a compatible use for, with large industrial buildings on one side and then existing multifamily on the other. This is the list of agencies that were routed and given a chance to communicate their issues with the proposed project. Of those, only 2 replied: Post Falls Police Department and the Post Falls Highway District. Both were neutral. And with that, I can take any questions.
Questions for staff?
Would you refresh my memory? How many apartments are going to be in the Amelia complex next to it?
I will probably defer to Drew on that, but I believe it was about 420-ish. I'll let him answer that.
Okay, thank you.
Keep that thought. Any other questions for staff?
No, not right now.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. Invite the applicant up at this time.
Good evening, Chairman Davis, fellow commissioners. Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering for the record, 126 East Poplar, City of Coeur d'Alene. Here tonight representing Watson and Associates and Rudine Development on the Apartments 26 project. Don't ask me what that means. I don't do project names and I don't do street names, but
Not the
That's-
marketing person?
that's the name, yes. That's the name we're going with, is Apartments 26. You can see there, and as Laura talked about, it's located just south of Expo Parkway. Where's my mouse here? So this is Expo Parkway that traverses through all the way over to Pleasant View. You've got the Woodbridge South residential development to the north. You've got the Crown Trucking Facility that is under construction there at the corner. Up here, you've got the UPS facility here and the Post Falls Industrial Corporate Park that's under permit right now. Here's your zoning map. So again, the property there is highlighted, hatched in black. Pretty tough to see right here. It's currently zoned to CCS. You have industrial property. Whoops, excuse me. Industrial property to the west, commercial property to the east. Then you have, again, the Woodbridge residential subdivision to the north. It is adjacent to the Amelia Apartments project. We are under 400 units, and then I think we ended up at 396, if I'm not mistaken, on the Amelia Apartments. Even though it was approved for over 400 through design, we lost some units, so we're under the 400. Guess I'm going to go back to this. Just a brief segue, if I can. You know, you guys, most of you know, I've been working on that Watson property out there for over 20 years. You guys have seen me come in a handful of times on stuff there. We're almost out of property out there, which is a good thing. I think Watson Group has less than 10 acres of property left out there to be developed, and most of that is actually along Pleasant View. So it's actually nice to see after 20 years of working on this, that this stuff is finally coming to fruition and developing. Here's the layout. Kind of got to turn your head sideways. North is up. In order to get it to fit on there, I had to kind of turn it. So you've got Expo Parkway here on this side. You've got I-90 here. So the Amelia Apartments would be right here. Again, 270 units, 15 acres, so it does meet that 18 unit per acre threshold. We are not asking for any bonus density, even though the multifamily or the R3 zoning allows for bonus density based on open space. We are providing the required open space plus some, but we're not asking for the bonus density that does go with it. Laura talked about the 4 approval criteria, so I'm just going to touch on a few of them real quick. A is the special use will or will not conform to the purposes of the underlying zone. Again, it's zone CCS. R3 multifamily is an allowed use in the CCS zone through the special use permit process, which is why we're here tonight to talk about that. So we do meet that criteria. B is whether the proposed use constitutes an allowable special use as defined by the zoning district. Again, it is an allowable use. Laura showed the matrix up there with the R3 that does allow the 18 units per acre. Item C, whether the proposed use will or will not be compatible with the health, safety, welfare of the public within the lands within the vicinity of it. And a lot of that really is defined by your master plans, your transportation master plan, sewer master plan, water master plan. A lot of that's outlined in the staff report. We are in conformance with those. Again, Expo Parkway is a major collector. Beck Road is a minor arterial. Both have direct access to I-90, so it's a great location from that standpoint. We're seeing a lot of residential, both single family and on the multifamily side, people that are living out here. Some of them work in Spokane, some of them work in Coeur d'Alene. They love the location because it's got great access to I-90 via Beck Road or Pleasant View, so they can go to and from work either way. So from that standpoint, it's got great access. Sewer, there is existing infrastructure in Expo Parkway. There's actually an existing sewer lift station that sits right here adjacent to the property. So all the infrastructure is in. That lift station does have capacity to serve this. Water is also available in Expo Parkway. There is capacity for that. Some of the amenities, and Laura touched on this a bit, you can see in green kind of all the open space that we're providing. We've kind of spread out the open space a little bit with a very large centralized, so the clubhouse would be here. Again, this would be Expo Parkway here. So you come in the main entrance, you've got a little bit of a mini roundabout, your clubhouse here, and then this very large open space here. You can faintly see we've got walking trails that connect all of the open spaces, that connect all of the units with direct access to the clubhouse. We're proposing a dog park back in this location back here. And again, you can see, faintly see under here, all of the connecting trails that will provide all access from the amenities to the clubhouse to the units. The other thing we're proposing is the landscape buffer, which you can see in blue. So a 25-foot landscape buffer on the west side, and also again along the freeway. That's just to help mitigate some of that noise, some of those buffer requirements as well. Item D is the comp plan. Laura kind of went through that. It's detailed out in your staff report. Obviously, we do feel it's in conformance with the comp plan. Providing diversified housing, convenient pedestrian and vehicle access. It is considered an infill development. It's developed all around it. So we would consider it an infill development. We do feel that it's in conformance with the comp plan as well. So, questions for me?
I have one. We got a letter from someone who is, I believe they have property that abuts it, and they said, while we support additional residential and density in the overall development area, we are opposed to the change if it will increase the setback requirements we have currently. So that's my question, is will it change setbacks that they currently have? So the property that's zoned, the property is zoned?
So property to the west is zoned industrial.
Industrial, okay.
It will not impact the setbacks on that. Again, we're providing the landscape buffer on our side of that
Okay.
property line.
And I'm sure that, my guess is that must be who it is, because that would be the property.
Yep.
So, okay.
Yeah, it
okay,
shouldn't
yeah.
affect any other property, because we've got Expo Parkway to the north side buffering the residential, and then more multifamily to the
Okay,
east.
right.
So
Okay, okay.
I have a quick question. Mr. Dittman, it looks like, so that 25-foot buffer there, if we were to double that, not if we were to, but it looks like within 50 feet of that property line, there's only, but 2 buildings?
talking the west property line here.
West property line,
Right
it looks
here.
like there's maybe 2 buildings there, so are those 3-story?
Those would be 3-story buildings,
So there'd
correct?
be 12 units within 50 feet of that property line out of
Yeah,
200?
you'd have,
Out of 270?
these units here, and then this building here that would be within 40 or 50 feet of that property line, correct?
Okay. So there's only 12 units out of 270 that are even within 50 feet of that industrial.
And we could work with staff, honestly, on those 2 locations and maybe increase that buffer a little bit in that area. And
Actually, I'm not, that's not where I was going with it. I was
Okay.
actually thinking it was pretty well laid out so that it's held away from
we
it.
tried to balance that, knowing that it was industrial there. That's why we have, and that's why I showed this exhibit. We do have all that green space there. And then again, here, parking, which acts as a buffer itself against some of that too. So,
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? No? All right.
thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir. Public comment. Those in favor?
None.
Those neutral?
None.
Those opposed?
We have one.
Okay. In opposition, wishing to speak, Mr. Flowers. Mr. Flowers, come on up. I would tell you the 4 minutes and state, but I know you know.
Okay. Bob Flowers, 3914 East Maplewood Avenue.
Thank you, sir.
Well, yep, they're right. The water's there, the sewer's there. We should ask ourselves, why is it there already? Why are these streets already there? Most of us know, a lot of you even helped. It was part of the urban renewal district. A lot of people spent a lot of time designing that area over there for industrial, for businesses. not for multifamily, high-density housing. It's kind of weird the way we're going through this again with another Watson property. That last one was a fiasco. Let's go to the basic cost to the people of Post Falls. There was a lot of money spent on developing that land for industrial, to bring jobs, to bring businesses into this area, to give people a chance to work and live here in this town. A lot of taxpayers' dollars. And the developer, he got all that money back from urban renewal, which means the people of Post Falls, because it's all tax dollars. But let's look at the basic costs of what it costs on a development, a residential development of this. It cost from $1.15 to $1.50 for every $1 of tax revenue created by such a development. So it costs the people at Post Falls more money. Where if it's industrial, like it's supposed to be, what it was designed to be, the cost is 35 cents to 65 cents per dollar of tax revenue for a community service project. So guess what? The people of Post Falls actually get some of their money back. Isn't that nice? This putting more high-density, multifamily residential in that area doesn't make a bit of sense. What are we going to do when the companies that are coming and will come want to build here? Are we going to say, sorry, we let them build all these apartments over here? Why not give the people of Post Falls their money's worth and save this for business, for industrial? It makes no sense to allow them to build something that's going to even cost us more money. They already got their money back from all that infrastructure that was put in there. So all they're doing is benefiting from the people of Post Falls. We need to look out after the residents we have here now, not the so-called future residents. This idea of build it and they will come has gotten old over time. I say we look out after the people here and we allow industry to have the land that we developed for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flowers.
Mr. Flowers, I've got a quick question for you, if you don't mind.
Yes.
I've heard those numbers before with $1 to $1.60 or whatever it was.
Yes. You want to know the
But
source?
I've never known how that was calculated or what the source was.
Okay. Okay, results of these studies have been consistent and in summary.
Mr. Flowers, do you want me to take it and say it was the Urban Land Institute Cost of Community Service
Thank you.
Study?
And do you know when that was done? I'm just curious. I've heard those numbers for a long time, but several years now, and
If
I
you
wonder
will
how-
allow the letter to be read into the record that,
It's already in the record because it was in our packet from Mr. Crosby? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know when that study was complete. Mr. Dittman.
No other comment?
We did have one other issue to bring up
Oh,
before rebuttal for Mr. Dittman. Staff has identified an additional condition of approval that we think is important to consider. We would also like to add in a condition 5 that they would have to conform to the residential zoning designations of an R3 zoning district. The issue has presented itself as part of our sign code. The underlying zoning district being CCS, a lot of our sign code designations are based on residential, commercial, industrial, so on and so forth. And so by adding this condition of approval, it would mean that any sort of signage would have to be under the residential designation versus the commercial designation of the underlying CCS. So,
Okay, duly noted. Mr. Dittman.
Thank you. Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering, for the record. A couple of points I'd like to make. I'm not going to debate urban renewal with Mr. Flowers. I don't think this is the right forum to do it, but he talks about why don't these people design this land and this. I've been working on that for 20 years. I'm the one that designed all of that Watson property, 20 plus years. So I'm intimate with it. I know what's going on. I've been working with Watson and Rudine and all these other people to try to get that property to where it is today. And like I said earlier, I think we're almost there. We started with, I don't remember, 300 and something acres. We're down to less than 10 acres of usable property that we've developed over years. And yeah, I've come in front of this commission, council a handful of times, changing zones, trying to make projects work. We've gone from commercial to residential to industrial, back to residential. We've been down that road. I've done all of that, so I'm intimately familiar with it. I'll concur with Commissioner Kimball on those numbers. I've been hearing those numbers for years. I don't know if they're accurate anymore or not. I can tell you that multifamily has a substantially higher tax base than commercial would, generates a lot of property tax, and has less impact. I mean, look at traffic alone. Multifamily, and Ray can correct me on my numbers if I'm wrong, but multifamily is about 6 to 7 trips per day per unit. You know, office can be 10 trips per day per 1,000 square feet. Retail can be up to 40 trips per day per 1,000 square feet. So, you know, less impact from multifamily than you could see from, or would see from commercial or industrial uses. As it relates to the conditions of approval, there are 4 that are in the staff report. And the 5th one that staff just added, we agree with all 5 of those conditions. We don't take exception to any of them. We've read them, we've discussed them with staff, so we don't take exception to those. Anything else for me?
I believe you answered my question because I was curious to see how long that had sat vacant. I thought it was 15, but you said approximately 20 years.
I started working on that project in 1999.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you have an idea for us, Amber maybe could help, the fees that you'll be paying on this unit with 270
I'm going to
units?
defer to John or Amber on that.
We're looking for not an exact number, but a ballpark
Yeah,
figure.
I'd have to, honestly, Russ, I'd have
Permits
to
and
look
the
them up.
impact fees and the kind of money that the developer is going to be responsible to pay to bring this in. It's just an illustration for
Sure.
for the audience of the
The magnitude of
magnitude of the fees that the developer will be paying.
I don't know the number. John may have numbers off the top of his head, but I don't.
I know that the sewer cap fees approximately about 5,300 per unit, and they can coordinate with engineering, I believe, on a little bit of reduction based off bedroom counts per the certain units. And I believe, I don't have we just recently updated the impact fees, but I believe each unit of like impact fee is about 4,500. So that would be the sewer, and then the impact fee per unit, and then there's, I don't know what water district.
Building permit.
You know what it is?
So that's $1.2 million in impact fees.
Yeah, I'm gonna say all in, it's probably closer to $20,000 a unit. Would be my guess. That'd be 5 million.
I think this is just the ordinance adopting the.
Field's looking at the ordinance.
And
But anyway, my point would be that it's certainly not a free ride for the developer.
Kirk from Rudine just told me they spent about $1.8 million in the last week on 216 units in the city of Post Falls, just on permit impact fees. So it's a substantial number.
Any other questions from Mr. Dittman?
No.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
I think so.
Questions for staff? Engineering? Anyone? No? Okay. Then I'll go ahead and close this hearing out and I'll open it up for commissioner comment.
I'll start. I think with regards to the 4 criteria that we need to look at for this project, I'm trying to get to them here in the staff report. So, thank you. So, first one being, is it an allowed use as a special use in the zone? And that's correct. It is. And so, yeah, does the implementation of the special use permit conform to the purposes of the zoning district? I think that's readily explained in the staff report as well as in the application. See whether the proposed use will be compatible with the health, safety, and welfare of the public or land uses in the vicinity. I think that's conditioned, and the way they have it designed with buffering on the west side, which is where the real incompatibility would lie. That's where it is. It's done. They've done their they've mitigated that as conditioned, and then whether it will comply with the goals and policies in the comp plan, and I think that's fairly straightforward. The staff and the staff report outline that fairly well. And, overall, I've heard those numbers with regards to the urban renewal district and that I've heard those for years. I think, so as of 2 years ago, apartment units were appraising at about $125,000 per unit. And they've gone up since then. But at 270 units, that's approximately $34 million worth of value. I've got an industrial site that I'm working on, and the cost of a 70-acre industrial site, the value that they're putting into that is $31 million. So if we're looking at the value of land for taxable value and whether it's good for the city of Post Falls, just from a dollars standpoint, even though that's irrelevant in the conversation here, I think it's important that everyone understand that high density residential is a lot different than 3 units per acre of houses, where you get a $400,000 houses so you get 1.2 million in an acre, and times 15 acres, it doesn't quite get there. So it doesn't come close to the value per square foot per acre that multifamily does. And I think it's important that we understand that moving forward if we're talking about urban renewal dollars. That said, I do think that it meets all the criteria for the special use permit, and I haven't heard any evidence to the contrary tonight.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think Ray's right. It meets the criteria, and the bigger picture is that, and I think what has been alluded to here is what do we need as a city? Do we need housing, or in this case, do we need commercial land? Well, it's been 20 years of vacant commercial land. We have quite a bit of commercial land in this and other areas that has been vacant for a long time. And I think the major impediment to most of these employers, large employers that want to bring a facility to Post Falls, is available housing for employees. They want to bring jobs, but they need people for those jobs, and those people need a place to live. And I think that's the bigger issue for us currently.
Anyone else?
I think that what Mr. Flowers said, it has merit. And I've had some similar concerns in that area, that all of this land that was meant to have commercial services and light industrial has been developed into residential, whether it's high density, a little lower density. And then the problem that I've seen with that is that when you have residential abutting industrial, there needs to be buffers, and there needs to be things to mitigate noise and lights. And a lot of times people buying in the residential area don't really recognize that the land right next to them is industrial. And I think there have been some issues. I've seen it come in front of us. However, in this case, the fact that the entire, I guess, east side is already apartment complex in the works, makes this a bit more of a natural flow to have the high-density apartment there. And they have already taken care of the issue of buffering. So therefore, I think it makes it more digestible for me.
Okay.
I just agree pretty much with what everybody else has said. I do also hate to see that we are losing commercial industrial properties out there, but at the same time, they have been sitting on this piece for a long time. It hasn't developed that way. And if something feasible had come along, I'm sure that it would have developed that way. So I don't think we can sit and ask somebody to keep sitting on their piece of property until the time that the right person comes along for that use, when we can change it up a little bit. And with the apartments on the other side and corporate or industrial or commercial on the left side, I think it'll fit in there well.
James?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, the lot's been vacant for a long time, and these special use permits are not easy to review because you can say, well, it's commercial, let's put commercial there. Well, why hasn't commercial gone in there? Why not? And we just can't. And I think at some point somebody has to make a decision, let's build and let's develop it because it is going to bring a substantial amount of money in for the city, and it will help the current residents as well as the future residents. So I think it's a good infill project.
I think more than one of you said, first and foremost, it meets the approval criteria. First and foremost. Second piece, personally, you take this piece and the Amelia Apartments combined, and I personally know of about 5 to 7% of people that would be able to move in there, the people that cannot find apartments and housing. So to say that there's not a need, that's not true. I think that this is, it's one of those things I would love to see industrial go in there, but it's sat there for 20 plus years. There's an opportunity, and to me, it makes a fit. So, sounds like everyone's on the same page at this point. I would look for a motion.
I would move to approve the special use permit USE 0004-2021 with conditions 1 through 4 as found in the staff report, and condition 5 as stated by staff in the presentation, finding that it meets criterias 1 through 4 as shown in the staff report, and directing staff to create a reasoned decision to that end.
I'll second.
Been a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, call for vote.
Hampi,
Yes.
Schlauhauer,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Stephenson.
Yes.
All right, that brings us to the second public hearing of the evening, Post Falls Baptist Church zone change. Mr. Manley, we'll open that up.
Good evening, Commissioners. John Manley, Planning Manager here at the City of Post Falls, presenting the Post Falls Baptist Church, zone change RZNE 9, 2021. The applicant is Drew Dittman of Lake City Engineering. The owner is Post Falls Baptist Church. They're looking to rezone approximately 8.75 acres of the existing limited commercial LC zone for the high-density R3 zoning district designation. This is the approximate location. You see the hatched area in red. It's at the northwest corner of Pole Line and Cecil, just north of the high school. Current land use is vacant. The site has no significant topology or vegetation matters. Worth mentioning, the water provider would be the Ross Point Water District, with the City of Post Falls providing sewer. There are 6 review criteria when it comes to looking at zone changes. We're going to go over the first 3 here as they're conceptually all kind of tied together. We're going to look at the future land use map and its designation. We'll look at and discuss briefly some goals and policies in the comprehensive plan per their request. Also look into street classifications, traffic patterns, any existing development, future land uses, or community plans, or if there's any geographical and natural features that could either support or provide an obstacle for this site proposal. So the first thing is traffic patterns. It's worth mentioning, Pole Line and Cecil, it was cited in the staff report that the Urban Renewal Agency, in conjunction with staff, is looking at the intersection of Pole Line and Cecil Road. And in the spring, summer of '22, they're looking at getting these improvements commenced and constructed. And it's cited some of the benefits is you'll get the pedestrian and bicyclist connections. Also, right here, that's a busy intersection, so those would provide an important safety connection for residents of the area that are walking or going via bike, and also provide increased safety. The reason why this is brought up is you also saw in the, in fact, I'm going to go get something I left. In the staff report, Exhibit PA2, that the police department initially commented there was concerns for safety of that intersection of Pole Line and Cecil Road. They were unaware of this project to mitigate the safety, and so I have some correspondence here that didn't make your report from Mark Brantle, the lieutenant with the police department. It says, I was aware of the design phase as I spoke with Rob. Once the intersection is improved, that will satisfy the concerns to our level. And so looking at the timing of the potential project and the police concerns, this mitigated their initial concern of PA2. Looking at the surrounding zoning, going back to those 3 criteria, the surrounding zoning to the north, you have CCS, that's Community Commercial Services, and I believe there's a storage unit facility there. To the east, you have other community commercial services spanning towards Highway 41. And then to the south, the school district, it's zoned R1, but it's an allowed use to school in the R1. And then to the west, you have other R1 subdivisions. Looking at the future land use map, that pink, that's business commercial. And then the yellow is that low density residential. In that business commercial, you'll look at what the purpose of that is, and that's to promote a mixture of moderate and high-density housing types within walking distance of the city center, neighborhood center, corridor commercial uses, as well as civic and other amenities within Post Falls. So when you look at their proposal, they would be within walking distance to Highway 41, that's corridor commercial, and you have some civic uses just to the south being the school. Therefore, it would be in line with that purpose. Looking at the principle and uses of the business commercial category, it supports a mixture of housing types built at a moderate density, at least 8 dwelling units per acre, and multi-story buildings, and a mixture of uses are encouraged. So why does this exist in the business commercial designation? Well, the designation, if I go back to that, is we know that Highway 41 is to the east. I may have a better map here. So along this corridor 41, you have business commercial. You never know exactly what's going to go where, but we knew that when we did the comp plan, you're going to get a mixing of uses. Generally speaking, when you're on a major road like Highway 41, you're going to get your commercial uses along those categories of road classification. Generally speaking, behind that, you get your higher densities, and those rooftops in close proximity to commercial builds up that vibrancy to allow commercialism to exist. And then you have your corridors, east-west corridors, be it Prairie Avenue or Pole Line, where those tendrils of business commercials kind of reached out. And in this case, it went to the west at that location, and of which was consistent with zoning that was already in place prior to our most recent comp plan update. In looking at this and being aware of business commercial and the type of mixing of uses, we have this implementing zoning district, this matrix of what would be an allowed ask. Not saying a guarantee, but if you're consistent with the comp plan, would make sense for an ask. That would be limited commercial, which it currently is, therefore consistent. And then you have the R3, what's being asked, in bold, the R3. So besides the future land use designation of business commercial, the comp plan also created pockets or areas of a conversation for focusing, for guiding growth in those areas. So the 41 North area, right here, and you can see the red box where the proposal is there in the southern limits. And I have it highlighted once again right there in blue. States that there's 30,000 residents forecasted in that area for 2040. And it's to spur commercial and adjacent uses along the highway. And it's envisioned, once again, like I said, for retail, residential services, all to coexist, and it's to help that vibrancy as spoken about 41 as a linear corridor going northbound. And in doing so, focus provisions for multifamily commercial uses near higher classified roadways, which is the case in this instance, being Pole Line and Cecil. And in looking at pedestrian connectivity, and I just spoke about the improvements on both Prairie and Cecil that are going to be done with the project, of which would build on that pedestrian connectivity and multi-use path connecting individuals to amenities and commercial corridors. Looking at the other three criteria, kind of already spoke about the fourth one there, based off of the goals and policies in the comp plan, looking at commercial and high density along your higher classified roadways. Chill out over here.
Talking on a CB radio.
So the Pole Line and Cecil Road would qualify this as an ask for those uses of high density being consistent. The fifth criteria, limited to neighborhood commercial and lower density residential zoning, is typically assigned as they proceed farther away from high intense urban activity. Now, concede that this area isn't necessarily a high intense urban activity. There is a high school there. There's a reason why there's urban renewal and the city is looking at that intersection for improvements, is it is a busy intersection, it's acknowledged. Therefore, there's a project. And so there's a lot of activity. And so potentially neighborhood commercial, the limited commercial would make sense there. I would argue that because of that intensity, some of the lesser dense projects wouldn't necessarily fit at that busy of an intersection. And then the last one, the industrial zoning, they're not being asked that, so that really wouldn't be applicable. Here is the agencies that were routed. Highway District had no comment. You can see that PA2, I already discussed that and what their initial comment was and where they stand on that now. DEQ, they just had some construction-related comments. Any questions for staff at this time?
Questions for staff?
I still have a question on the traffic part. I see that there's plans for it to be taken care of there, but that is a horrible intersection. So is there a way that it would be ensured that nothing is built there prior to the improvements at Cecil and Pole Line?
Typically, we don't condition the zone changes, so we could talk to Field a little bit about that. But you look at the timing, it's 2021. If right now, if we had a site plan right now that's about ready to be approved, they wouldn't more than likely even get a CO at the earliest until probably early fall of 2022. So just looking at just the realities of construction, and they would be post the implementation of that improvement.
Still no way to ensure that, though, right? I mean, I would have big concerns about apartment complex going in at that intersection.
See field leaning
Field.
in.
Again, you know, as a rezone, it's a change in the overlay. It's not really the farther down the development line.
So
again,
we'd have
it's-
to wait till they came back and then condition that they don't start anything until that's done, or?
Well, again, we don't condition zoning that way. So the change in zone is the change in the zoning overlay. So
We do mixed zoning, that's where we do some conditions, but that didn't really make sense in a project like this to do a mixed zoning. Could bring up Rob, he might be able to bring in because he's been working on it, he might have
Yeah,
some
I'm just,
insight on that.
because I'm not understanding how that, if that is an issue on there, and I understand we could change the zoning, but what's to stop it from then being constructed without something being done with the roadway first?
So Commissioners, Robert Paulus, Assistant City Engineer. I understand your concern. The best I can give you is where we're at as far as schedule on that project. We have entered into a contract for the design and the traffic analysis at that location. Traffic study has been, or the traffic counts have been collected. We are currently doing the traffic analysis right now to weigh the pros and cons of a roundabout in operation versus a traffic signal, also weighing some of the right-of-way constraints that exist at that location. Based upon our contract or agreement with the Urban Renewal Agency, we need to expend the dollars and have that constructed in the 2022 budget year. So right now, our schedule is to have the project designed, out on the street for bidding in February of 2022, get under construction as soon as weather allows. We are going to have to be a little bit sensitive on that issue with when school is in session and when school gets done. We're going to be discussing with the school district that issue and balancing when construction starts with how that operates with the school year, and at the same time, our desire to have that done by early fall of 2022. So realistically, based upon what Mr. Manley mentioned earlier, we are on a similar path frame where if they were to make an application for site plan review now, fall of 2022 is when we would anticipate COs starting to occur at that site.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, sir. Invite the applicant up.
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering, 126 East Poplar Avenue, City of Coeur d'Alene, for the record. Here tonight to talk about the Post Falls Baptist Church zone change. You can see the property there is highlighted in red at the intersection, as we've been talking about Cecil and Pole Line, directly across from the high school. You can see the Tullamore development to the northeast. You've got residential properties developed to the west. Light commercial properties that are developed to the north. I'll get into that a little bit more here in a minute. I'll be honest with you, this is a little bit of a tougher sell than the previous hearing. And the reason I say that is we're asking for a zone change, not a special use permit. And as we've talked about, you can't condition a zone change. Once you change the zone, we're allowed to meet the criteria within that zone. So it's a little bit of a tougher sell, but I'm going to draw some parallels to the previous one. The church has owned this property since 1999. Again, it's been sitting there as light commercial for a long time. I've been a part of the Tullamore project for over 15 years now as we've developed all of that out. And this little area of light commercial, you're seeing it developed as mini storage, because that's what the best use is for it right now. And I don't think we need or want to see any more mini storage, especially in that corridor. But you are seeing some multifamily, and have seen some multifamily develop in that area with the Tullamore project. So from our standpoint, it's a tough sell, but we think it's a good fit, and it's a great fit. And I'll get into some of that criteria stuff here in a minute. Again, it's a vacant piece of property. It's currently underutilized. It's sitting there as light commercial. It is currently zoned light commercial. We're asking for R3 multifamily zoning. It's 8.75 acres. Here are the 6 zone change approval criteria right out of your city code. John kind of went through these. The last 2 I've stricken out because they're really not applicable. The first one, and again, I'll just go through these briefly because I know they're in the staff report and John touched on them. Amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the future land use map. The future land use map designates this property as business commercial, as John had discussed. R3 multifamily is an implementing zone. It's an allowed zone in that business commercial designation in the comp plan. So this is an allowed use for that piece of property. B, number 2, is it should be in conformance with the comprehensive plan, and that's all outlined in your staff report. I don't want to dig into it, but we want to talk about a couple of things. Obviously, we think it's a great location. You've got great access on Cecil Road, which is a major collector. You got Pole Line, which is a minor collector. You've got the improvements that are scheduled to be done there. I'll touch a little bit on that about timing. Assuming we get a favorable nod from the Planning Commission, we still have to go to City Council. We still have to go through site plan review. Best case, if I do my job well, best case is we could pull a building permit late spring, early summer of 2022. Be looking for a CO spring of the following year, 2023. That's just how long it takes to develop if this were to develop as multifamily. So timing-wise, that intersection improvements would be done before we would even be looking for a CO on our first units if we were to develop it as apartments, if we get the approvals we need. So, again, diversified housing is needed as it relates to the comp plan. I mean, I wouldn't be up here asking for the zone change if we didn't need more housing. The demand is there. We know it. Access to pedestrian facilities, you got the Tullamore Park right there. You've got the new sports park that's being developed down on the end of Cecil, right across from the high school. So from that standpoint, it's a great location. You got direct access to the commercial on Highway 41, which is going to be developed. And infrastructure is available. You got sewer and water, and the roads are there to the site. It's an infill project. It's in the middle of the city. It's an infill project. C is zoning is assigned following considerations of such items as streets, traffic, existing developments. Again, this is deferring to your master plans, like I talked about in the last one, your transportation, your sewer, and your water master plans. There's comments from staff in the report that we're in conformance with all of those. There is capacity for those. From a transportation standpoint, again, there's scheduled improvements at that intersection, which are needed. That is a horrible intersection, I'll give you that. Those improvements are needed. Item D, commercial and high-density residential is typically assigned along streets with higher road classifications. Again, Cecil is a major collector. Pole Line is a minor arterial. Those are 2 of your highest street classifications within the city. So from that standpoint, it fits and it meets those needs. And here I've shown that. So Pole Line east-west is the minor arterial. Cecil north-south major collector. You got the intersection improvements going. To us, it seems like a good fit, and that's why we're here asking for the zone change. Questions for me? I think I'm going to let Mr. Anderl speak before I ask questions. He's been dealing with the church directly, so I think he wants to talk a little bit about that, and then I'll be back up for questions.
Perfect.
Thank you. Hayden Anderl, 2000 Northwest Boulevard, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I approached the Post Falls Baptist Church, and it just so happened that at the time I approached them, they had just discussed, unknowns to me, that they were hoping to do something with their land because they have an existing church just up on Spokane Street, just north of 15th. And their goal is to build a larger church for their growing congregation. Basically, they said, you know, this is kind of a crazy happen chance that you happen to reach out. I grew up in Coeur d'Alene. I'm a third generation learning the development business, and I've been trying to find a project to work on with my dad to learn the business, and I've been out trying to find a good piece of land for it for a long time. We've done a couple of projects in Post Falls. We revitalized the marina right down here on Spokane Street. We have one small project in Post Falls that was built a few years ago before I got into the business, but went to the church. It is a very unique piece of property because the Yellowstone pipeline runs underneath it. So what you build there, you have to be very thought out with how you lay things out, and it's an expensive process, it's an arduous process. But I come to just represent the church. They have started to move forward with their plan to build a new church on their Spokane Street location. They have held this land, have owned it since 1999. The pastor, Seth Hohenstreet, is a great guy. He couldn't be here tonight. He works at the fire department here as well. Their goal is to be able to expand their congregation on the land that they have that's right here in Post Falls. The highest and best use for this land is multifamily, and the only way that they can get the maximum value out of that land is for a multifamily project. As Drew touched on, you know, we have a long road ahead of us to get to, you know, approval from council, excuse me, building permits, and then CO well after that road is done. But I do think when that is done, this type of project can help because we are seeing a lot of families that move into apartments, people that are building homes, and you can walk to both Prairie View and Post Falls High School, which I think is great. I am a real estate agent here. I like to disclose that, and I do like to mention that this deal with the church was completely done free of any fees if it is approved, for them to be able to maximize the amount of money they get to put it into their new church here in Post Falls. So I do hope that you consider this. I know multifamily can be a touchy issue with some people. At the end of the day, working in this market, I've seen the amount of need for housing, and that's not only long-term renters, that's short-term people building homes. People want to live in this area, and it's a difficult thing to tell them that they can't, and we really hope that this can provide a great opportunity for people, both long-term and short-term, to be part of the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, the church property is outlined here in red, 8.75 acres. The LC zone, so all of the property to the north is currently zoned light commercial, and you have the property to the east that's currently zoned light commercial as well. The rest of it's zoned residential, but you've got mini storage being developed to the north in the light commercial. You've got obviously the church. I lost my mouse. There we go. You've got the church right across the street. You've got some more mini storage, and then you've got multifamily. So there is multifamily in the area. Again, it makes a good fit to us. It's right across the street from the high school at the intersection of two major streets. So, questions for me?
Questions for applicant?
Yeah, do you have any tentative plans or density? Or is it going to go with whatever R3 will allow?
No, again, that's why I start off saying the R3 is a tougher sell because you're bound by those requirements of the R3, which obviously allows up to 18 units per acre. We've worked on some very rough layouts. As Hayden had indicated, it's a tough site. You have the Yellowstone gas line that traverses across the property kind of on a weird angle here, and then it goes through these two subdivisions here and out. So it makes it challenging to develop and to come up with layouts, and obviously they have required setbacks from that gas line that we would obviously meet. But again, you're allowed 18 units the acre in the R3 zone, so I would anticipate you would see something along those lines.
Okay. Other questions? No. Thank you, sir. Public comment, those in favor,
None.
those neutral,
None.
those opposed. In opposition, wishing to speak, Mr. Flowers.
Bob Flowers, 3914 East Maplewood Avenue. Well, I won't go through everything I went through earlier, but I will draw your attention to the response from the police department, the original response. And they asked that that intersection be approved before the approval of this project. Now, so far, you know, we got a lot of, well, we haven't designed anything yet, we haven't done anything yet in that. And it's for the church, and I understand that, but when did it become the citizens' responsibility to make sure their project pencils out correctly for the maximum amount of return? It didn't. And actually, in that neighborhood, some light commercial might fit right, might be a good place for a convenience store. Some mom and pop type businesses, I don't know. But putting multifamily high density right across from the high school, talk about wanting to dump a lot more traffic in an already busy area. I mean, you all have seen the traffic from our high school. You know how hectic it gets at certain times of the day. Well, now magnify it with a big old apartment complex right across the street from it. Until those improvements are done to that intersection, I would say table this project until at least then, and then have them reapply. Maybe then it'll make more sense. But right now, given approval to a high-density multifamily unit there now does not make sense. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Flowers, just as a note, from the police department, it was to be approved before construction starts, not before the zone change.
I misread.
Okay, in opposition, also wishing to speak, Mr. Bill Armstrong.
My name is Bill Armstrong. I reside at 2615 North Cecil. I'm going to correct the gentleman. I own the storage facility, and it's not mini storage. It's big RV storage. That's all it is, okay? I've been there for 32 years. I knew Mrs. Davenport, who gave the property to the Bulls Falls Baptist Church, okay? Now we're going to skip to 2001. Mr. Parker, I'm sorry to say is passed now, was the pastor at that time, came and begged me to allow us to annex because they wanted that corner, because he wanted a church and a school on that property. Didn't benefit me to annex, okay? No. He begged and begged and begged, and I finally gave in and said, not a problem, I'll do it to help the church, okay? But to Brad Marshall, who was representing Maroon Yeager at that time, or Adams and Clark, sorry, I said, if the city's gonna take property from me, they're gonna pay me for it, not an issue, okay? Well, the problem was, as soon as I signed the document to allow them to annex me to help the church, they didn't pay me anything. They took 30 feet off the front of my property and then sent me a bill for $48,000 because the sewer went past my house, okay? So I have lost a bunch of my property. So my wife and I had to refinance our home to pay that bill, and we weren't even hooked up, okay? Now we're gonna speed way forward. 2017, I was in a wheelchair for the second time in my life, headed for disability. We decided to do this because I can run that from a wheelchair. The city approved it, but during the meetings, two of the people that are in here in planning and zoning told us you absolutely cannot have a driveway facing a collector road. Close your driveway, access the road to the north. My driveway's been my driveway since '84. I've owned it since '88. So unless that was a lie, you can't access those apartments onto Cecil because it's a collector road, okay? So I absolutely disagree with this apartment. I'm very disappointed with Post Falls Baptist Church because they aren't doing what the original intent was that I allowed to annex, because it has cost us nothing but headache, heartache, financial woes. When we built the storage facility, I had to pay $12,000 to hook up to the sewer and $9,000 for another water meter. Then the 10-foot dry utility, which was my yard, had a tree that we planted 21 years ago when my wife was pregnant with my youngest boy. Somebody that's in this room right now said, "We'll never take that from you." You know what they did? They took 7 more feet and cut my boy's tree down. There's a bike path there. I had to pay for the bike path. I had to pay for the curbs, the sidewalk, or the curbs, all the trees. I paid for everything. Almost $200,000 I've lost to help this church. When I found that they were going to build multifamily, it was such a hurt for what I gave in for this church, and now they're gonna do that to us. So I'm tired. I went to Urban Renewal and said, "Can you please help me with some of the cost on the infrastructure out on the road?" They said, "No, you're not large enough for us." I'm not large enough. I'm just asking to help with a little bit of the money because I've lost land. Another person in here, the last time I was in this building, I was talking about the property to the north of us, and I don't care what you annex, just stay away from me. Don't ask me for anything. And the person came to me outside that door and said, "We're gonna take more land from you. You know that, don't you?" "No, you're not taking from me." He said, "Yeah, we are. We're gonna take land off your North 5. We wanna widen that next road up there." So the whole thing for us, for being 32 years, I got a lot of heartache over this land. I mean, what the city has done, how they've treated us. Sorry to say it, but they've lied to us quite a few times. And I'm tired. And now you want to put apartments next to my house. I'm done.
Thank you, sir. In opposition, also wishing to speak, Mr. Howard Burns.
Good evening, Howard Burns, Rocky Point Road, Post Falls. I've been here before. First off, in the prior hearing, you talked about the massive amount of money of impact fees we're going to pay on apartments, the one for Apartments 26. There's also 400 units next door. Impact fees are there called impact fees because it's for an impact being made on the city. It doesn't include any fire impact fees because you don't collect them, and it doesn't include any school fees because you don't collect them. So the fact that the apartment building, this one or that one, is paying some massive amount of fees, that might, just might, cover the impacts that they're going to make on all the infrastructure that exists today that everybody else has paid for. So calling out the impact fees and saying how great they are and how much money somebody's going to spend, that's a red herring. And I think it's very disingenuous by you folks up there. Because no school and no fire, and here you're talking about a giant apartment complex. Why don't you make it another mini storage? We've got them going everywhere else because you make such little houses, people can't put all the stuff in them that they want. Keep it limited commercial. Or maybe discuss a planned project with a little bit of R2 and R1. Limited commercial is not a bad zone. There's nothing wrong with it. As for the 30,000 people that are going to go in that area, how many have already been approved and live there? Because if you look at the zone changes that have been made, I'm going to tell you that there's more than 30,000 new residents already ready to go in that area. Can the staff here say how many apartment units have been approved by this group in the last year? Can anybody tell me? I know it's in the thousands. But somebody ought to be able to say, We are now approving our 722nd unit this year. That ought to be able to be told at these hearings so that you know what you're doing instead of everything working in a little microcosm. And as for the Post Falls Baptist Church, I hope there's some members that are going to go to the church and say, why are you doing this to us? Because it's greed. We heard it from the real estate agent. They want to get the most money they can get, so let's raise the zoning. The more pieces you can put on it, the higher you can pay for the land. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Dittman.
Chairman Davis, Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering. For the record, I appreciate everybody's comments. A couple of points I'd like to make. Again, I'm going to draw a parallel to the previous one. That property has been owned by the church for 20 years and watched everything around it develop. And it's being underutilized, and the church is looking to sell it and develop it. Just like I can sympathize with Mr. Armstrong to the north there, but he was allowed to develop his property within the rules and the confines. The church is looking to do the same thing through the processes, and that's why we're here asking for a zone change. A couple of things I want to emphasize. A little bit about traffic, and I talked about it at the last one. Traffic generation of commercial versus residential. Multifamily generates, and I wrote these numbers down, and Commissioner Kimball can correct me if I'm wrong, but apartments 6 to 7 trips per day per unit. Office could be 10 trips per day per 1,000 square feet. Retail could be up to 40 trips per day per 1,000 square feet. So from a traffic standpoint, multifamily is going to generate less traffic than if that were to develop out as commercial. Let's see. I think Commissioner Kimball also made the point in the last hearing about property taxes and about valuations of multifamily versus that of industrial or commercial. Now, yes, impact fees don't cover such things as fire and schools, which was brought up, but property taxes do. And the higher your property taxes, the higher your valuation. And I think Commissioner Kimball said 125 grand a unit. You're a little low on that, Ray. We're seeing numbers over 225, over 250 a unit now. So, $250,000 per unit of assessed taxable property value for multifamily. So that's a huge number. That's big. That's what pays for fires in schools. Impact fees do pay for impacts that project causes, and those are standardized, and those are paid at building permit time and go towards offsetting the impacts of that project. But the property taxes do pay for those other things that were mentioned. I think I've covered everything. Any questions for me?
Any questions for applicant?
No. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Questions for staff while we're here?
Is there, the one gentleman who had the property, I guess just to the north, that has the RV storage, he said something about a collector road and he wasn't allowed to have a driveway out on the collector road.
It's referring to Cecil, I think.
Onto Cecil. Is there any, yeah.
Commissioners, Robert Paulus, Assistant City Engineer. So with access for the city of Post Falls, single-family residential is not allowed direct access onto a collector or arterial roadway within the city of Post Falls. But when you get to commercial use, and multifamily is considered a commercial use, we do allow access onto a collector or arterial roadway. The reason for that is single-family tends to be driveways where people back into the traffic. Collector roadways tend to be higher speed, higher volumes, and backing into the roadway is not a safe activity. With the commercial use, you're allowed to have potentially a stop-controlled driveway approach, or the fact that traffic coming from a commercial use or multifamily use, traffic is coming in nose first into the roadway and making the turns. You're not having that backing in, and so that's why we do allow for multifamily and commercial uses to access collector roadways such as Cecil or arterials such as Pole Line Avenue.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Paulus, I got one quick question. It has to do with the intersection improvements. I just want to be very clear. I want to make sure I understand it correctly, that the improvements are funded, that there's funding
The
set
improvements
aside.
are funded. We have approximately, I believe it's 1.2. If I'm wrong, it's 1.3 million from urban renewal towards those intersection improvements. There's also a slight amount of impact fees, which we are utilizing towards those improvements as well.
So it's going to be designed between now and
It
next
is under
spring?
design right now. The scope of the work includes putting in curb gutter and multi-use facilities, a path along Poline Avenue from the Knapp subdivision on the west end of the project to Cecil Road. Includes putting in either a traffic signal or roundabout at the Cecil Poline intersection and restriping Poline Avenue from just about Charleville Road, which is a quarter mile to the east, through this area to get the road lanes in alignment to handle the traffic movements and to improve bicycle facilities in front of the high school as well.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit.
Okay?
So if you were to give a percentage of confidence that that project will be complete by winter of 2023, what do you think that would be?
Well over 95%.
Thank you.
I've been tasked to make sure this project happens in fiscal year 2022, and it is going to happen as much as I can push and make sure it happens.
Thanks.
What makes the decision whether you do a roundabout or a traffic signal?
From an engineering perspective, our first leaning is towards a roundabout. Roundabouts tend to operate similar to a traffic signal when you're looking at peak hour traffic. The biggest difference between a roundabout and a traffic signal is roundabouts tend to be safer. Utilizing some information from the, the National Insurance Institute, they did a study several years ago where they found that if you take a comparable intersection with comparable traffic volumes, that a roundabout tends to have 90% fewer fatalities, 60% fewer injury accidents, and 30% fewer collisions overall. So our general leaning is to put in a roundabout because it tends to operate safer and can handle traffic equivalently or possibly better. Prior to moving forward to this project, we also had some discussion with the Federal Highway Administration in their geometric safety design section. And we asked them about some of the pros and cons of roundabout versus traffic signal with pedestrian crossings, since we have a school at that location and an elementary school just down the street. And the FHWA even mentioned that the first preference should be towards a roundabout because a roundabout slows traffic down and makes it safer for kids crossing the road as well. So what could affect our decision on that? How they operate and how it may impact some of the local access and right-of-way issues. If we get into a situation where we have to buy a lot of right-of-way to fit the roundabout in, that could stop the ability to build a roundabout and make a traffic signal more cost-effective. But we'd still be looking at what are the safety issues and how do we address pedestrians as well as vehicular volumes.
Okay. Because my concern on a roundabout personally is I know that the fence on the southeast corner of Cecil, you can't see. So if there's not a stoplight, I don't know, unless the roundabout took part of that and stretched it out and moved it away or something.
A roundabout makes that a little bit easier because when you're going into a roundabout, your key thought should be looking at the pedestrian crossings in front of you, as well as the vehicle in front of you, and then looking at the traffic to the left. So you're not looking at that fence trying to figure out how I'm going to make a left turn or through movement.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for Rob while he's here? Okay, thank you, sir. Any other questions for staff? None? Okay. We'll go ahead and close things out. Open it for comment. Anybody care to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
To me, from a zoning perspective, this is an interesting area of town. That intersection is definitely needs some improvements, and it sounds like it will get done. I think it's kind of like what I said before, you know, at some point, we got to make a decision on what needs to go there and does it fit? I personally, I don't think I'm sold on R3, maybe an R2, or, and then even, you know, there's a lot of residential out there, even some that's in the county. I understand what the zoning map says, totally. I wanted to touch on impact fees, just because that's been brought up a couple times. Obviously, the multifamily brings in a lot of money. You know, as stated earlier, fire and school is not in there as far as impact fees, but they are covered by property taxes. You know, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but last I heard, you know, there are discussions going on about fire impact fees between the city, the county, and the districts. And my understanding of the school impact fees, that it's something that has to be taken care of in Boise. So it's something that we can all do, just emailing our representatives. If we want that change, we gotta start speaking up for ourselves. I don't know, like I said, I'm not totally sold on the R3. I think it is a busy area, even with the roundabout, which will be a great improvement over there. It just, to me, it seems like an R2, I mean, really, an R1 would be nice there. I understand that's totally out of the, not allowable in there, and that would be a totally different route, but that's, those are my thoughts.
Okay. Anybody else?
I really have concerns about that intersection. I do, of course, when I read the letter from the Post Falls Police Department, I was hugely concerned. I mean, it is their recommendation that the intersection be improved before construction, be approved for increased safety of the public. Now, I understand it puts it in a bad position because basically, if we would approve this, there is no parameter or restriction on that improvement, meaning the traffic, the intersection improvement, being done before the apartment building could be built. So, and it sounds like from what Mr. Manley said, you told the police about the anticipated improvement, I think is what it's referred to. And really, he didn't have any different response. It was kind of like, well, yeah, if that's going to be done, then that's great. It's fine. As long as that traffic's taken care of, then the apartment building, you know, we don't have a problem with. So it really sounds to me like the response was ultimately the same. As long as the traffic issue is taken care of, the apartment building isn't going to be a problem. However, there's no guarantee, and I do understand that things move slowly, and they absolutely anticipate that the roundabout or the traffic situation will be mitigated. However, I have heard before apartments on off of Highway 41 going in, and I actually voted against them because I said Highway 41 needs to be improved, it needs to be finished, it needs to be improved. And I kept hearing back, it's going to be done. It will be done well before these apartments are ever done. And that's not the case. That's not how it worked out. So as much as I understand, we expect those improvements to be done, I don't think anything is certain when it comes to timing of improvements, and since we can't put any restriction on a time frame for that, I just don't feel comfortable with an R3.
Anyone else?
So, with regards to the review criteria, I think it's pretty straightforward. Criteria A, that it's in its zone change to R3 would be in accordance with the zone future land use map, because R3 is an implementing zone in that designation. So, with regards to criteria B, the zone map should be in accordance with the goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan. And I think that's been fairly well laid out in the staff report. With regards to Criteria C, zoning is assigned following considerations such as street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land use, community plans, and geographic features. And there's a couple things. So let's just say that a roundabout goes in there. Roundabouts are land eaters. They take up room, and the city would need to get some right-of-way, definitely on the northwest corner there from this property. And so I've worked with Mr. Paulus in a professional manner for over 20 years now, and I know him to be an incredibly conservative guy. And when he says 95%, that says to me that he's going to do everything in his power to make sure that it's going to happen. And he leaves 5% out there because he doesn't. That's the unknown part that he can't control. It also so there will be intersection improvements that are that are funded. There's funding there. It's under design. They're just deciding which route they're going to take. And unlike Highway 41, which was a state project that was held up because of right-of-way acquisition and all kinds of other problems that happened, I see this as something that the city has a lot of control over, and they have the ability to get in there and get these intersection improvements done. And I think that takes care of traffic issues, and it meets criteria C. The traffic patterns in the area. Let's just say that the church decided to build a church and a school there, and instead of apartments, and they decided that one of their members willed them $20 million, and they build a church there next year. Same thing. It's vehicles coming into an intersection in allowed use. So the fact that there's intersection improvements there that are planned, they're scheduled, they're funded, and if it happens 6 months, those improvements happen 6 months before CO or 2 months after CO. Okay, that's about as perfect as it gets in the construction industry. Nothing's perfect, but it is getting done. And then with regards to criteria D, commercial high density residential housing is along higher road classifications. Those are two collectors. It's right at an intersection. It meets that 100%. And then criteria E and F are also not really applicable. So it meets all the criteria for a zone change. Traffic is this little red herring that kind of gets thrown out there about, traffic's going to be horrible if it's this one use. Traffic's can be horrible with any kind of use depending on what's there. So it's just, now we got, but the city's got it funded. So I just don't see that as an issue.
I don't agree that it meets all of the criteria. I think B, amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the goals and policies found in the Post Falls Comprehensive Plan. And if you go down to that and you look at the policies, one is to maintain and enhance resident quality of life. I can't agree that putting something in that the police department has clearly said that they have concerns about for safety purposes. I don't believe that meets the criteria to maintain and enhance resident quality of life. So I don't think it does meet all the criteria as far as I'm concerned.
Any other comment? Addressing a couple things. Number one, Mr. Armstrong, I do very much appreciate his comments. There's some concerning comments, nothing to do with this particular piece, but I have a great deal of respect for the staff and the city, and it saddens me to hear that there's been some issues. hopefully we can work on that or get that resolved. As far as to follow the original plan and actually put a school in there, if you put a school in there, it's going to make the impact, the traffic, much, much worse. If you go commercial, particularly between the hours of 7:30 and 8:30 and 2:30 to 5, every high school kid and parents trying to pull in and get things, it's far worse. I again would have to agree with Ray in the sense of I put a great deal of trust in Rob's word. And again, the police department's concern wasn't with the project itself. It was with the traffic. And if it looks like that's going to get taken care of, then again, I personally feel like it meets all the criteria. So any other questions, concerns, thoughts? Good to the order. Ross?
Yeah, this is a tougher one, no doubt about it. The criteria, I think it doesn't meet them perfectly, but it doesn't not meet the criteria either. And in a case like this, I definitely empathize with the landowner to the north. I think it was Mr. Armstrong. You know, what he's talking about is he's had to bear development costs for his property. And, you know, they're real.
Right.
And this property will bear the same costs. And philosophically, I think that I believe in the rights of the property owner, and they should have the ability to request this zone change. And I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, either zone. So I'm okay with it.
Any other comment?
I'm just kind of hesitant too on the R3 zoning. I think that's a very heavy zone for right across from the high school, right there on that corner. I'm just having to think about that one.
Other thoughts? It's perfectly okay to disagree through this. This is why we're having this process and why we're having the discussion. And it sounds like we're a little bit, kind of in between. So
Right.
I would rather discuss it now than not. No other comment?
I don't know. I look at this as I've driven by this site, I don't know how many times in my life, my professional life looking at it. I know that the Yellowstone pipeline goes through there at a wonky angle. And if it's like anywhere else where the Yellowstone pipeline is, it's about 1.5 feet or 2 feet deep. And there's a reason it hasn't developed. And that's probably one of the biggest reasons. It's not going to go R2 or R1 because of the pipeline. Just the angle, the way it crosses there, is prohibitive for that. So it's either going to be some sort of commercial, so probably storage of some sort, because it doesn't get the traffic for any kind of retail. So it's not going to, as busy as it is, the retail is going to happen out on Highway 41. And so if we're looking at highest and best use and what we can, as a community, what we can see out there, I think R3 is probably, the right implementing zone. And if the church doesn't want to put a church and a school there, and they want to utilize that as a funding source to build at their existing property on Spokane Street, I think it's a big overall benefit to the community.
Anyone else?
Can I ask you what the buffer would be at construction time between the apartments and the single family on the west side?
We just recently adopted buffer standards between the multifamily, commercial, and single family. I believe that is a 15-foot buffer between the single family and residential. Because we haven't I don't have the code. I haven't implemented the code. I just know that it's either 10 or 15.
So, and they can go 3 stories, right? In the R3?
R3, you can go up to 45 feet, and that's measured from the height of the pitch of the roof to the ground.
Okay.
And feel this is a recommendation to city council?
It's a recommendation on zoning to city council,
Okay.
yeah.
Any idea when it'll go before council?
Do you remember what we had?
It's probably not going to go before council until the first one in January.
Okay, again, we're looking at recommendation to council for zoning.
Are you ready for a motion?
If everyone spoke their piece, I would entertain a motion.
I would move to recommend approval of an R3 zone for the Baptist Church zone change, RZNE 0009-2021, finding that it meets the review criteria found in the staff report.
I'll second it.
Got a motion and a second, call for a vote.
Stephenson,
No.
Carey,
No.
Kimball,
Yes?
Davis,
Yes.
Schlauer,
Yes.
Hampi,
No.
Field, we have ourselves an old-fashioned, what they call a tie.
Well, then it can move forward it's a non-recommendation at this point, so.
So that was my question. So we can still move it forward to city council, that basically the recommendation was neither approved nor denied.
Well, it would be a denial,
Right.
because of lack of a majority.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Commissioners, are we good? Do we need to take a 3-minute break to run to the restroom to get a drink, or are we good?
Okay.
Everyone's so quiet now.
Yep.
We good?
Yep.
Good.
Okay. Then we will go ahead and move on to the next Stockwell annexation file. Go ahead and open that public hearing.
Okay, good evening again, Commissioners. Laura Jones, Associate Planner, City of Post Falls, presenting to you the Stockwell annexation. The property owners are Dave and Debbie Stockwell. The applicant is Chuck Hughes, and the requested action tonight is to make recommendation to City Council for the zoning designation of single-family residential R1 on approximately 5 acres as part of an annexation request into the City of Post Falls. The site is located south of Prairie Avenue between Howell Road and North Chase Road, as indicated on the map in the red. Currently, the site is occupied by the Stockwell single-family residents. Physical or natural features to be aware of is just the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer, which I'll discuss that in future slides. The water provider is East Green Acres Irrigation District, and the City of Post Falls will be providing sanitary sewer services. To the north, looking at the surrounding property and zoning, is Kootenai County single-family residential lots, typical 5-acre lots within the county. To the east is an R1 subdivision, which is Tranquil Meadows. To the south is an R1S subdivision, which is the Craftsman at Meadow Ridge. It does have a PUD on that, so they are not the standard 1-acre lots as affiliated normally with the R1S zone. The PUD overlay for those lots does allow them to go down to the R1 bulk emplacement standards. And that is also the case to the west with the Arrowleaf Estates subdivision. Again, R1S zoning. but does not contain the typical 1-acre lots and has the R1 bulk emplacement standards associated with the PUD. There are 6 zone change review criteria for an annexation request. First is that amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the future land use map. The future land use designation is transitional. The comprehensive plan states that the transitional designation is assigned to zones, or excuse me, assigned zones should be compatible with the adjacent uses and zones within the city and consistent with the guiding principles within the associated focus area. The comprehensive plan calls out the Central Prairie as the focus area, and it states that future growth should embrace a variety of housing types and land uses, maintain quality standards, and provide even greater emphasis on pedestrian friendliness and connecting neighborhoods to community trails and nearby amenities. It also asks to support provisions for a variety of housing types and densities. The second review criteria is that amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the goals and policies found within the Post Falls Comprehensive Plan. There are 2 goals that are relevant for annexation requests. They are Goal 5, which is to keep Post Falls neighborhoods safe, vital, and attractive, and Goal 7, which is to plan for and establish types and quantities of land uses in Post Falls, supporting community needs and the city's long-term sustainability. And to obtain those 2 goals, staff looked at Policy 2, which is to apply or revise zoning designations with careful consideration of factors including the future land use and compatibility with surrounding land uses, which I just discussed in the earlier slides, so I'm not going to go over those 2 again. It also looks at infrastructure and service plans, existing and future traffic patterns, and the goals and policies of the comp plan and related master plans and facility plans. Looking into the infrastructure, there's actually a second amended final draft of the staff report that was updated last Friday. We got new information regarding the Fisher lift station, and it is approaching capacity, and reconstruction is anticipated for the year 2023 and will be tentatively available for use in 2024. Based on what the applicant is proposing for a future subdivision, which is not coming before us until a later date when this flow test is completed. But that subdivision would use approximately 25% of the remaining capacity. And staff is working with the Water Reclamation Division to complete flow tests and verify this capacity. So the verification of the current capacity will be required prior to subdivision application.
So to clarify, the 100% that is left, as far as capacity goes, that this piece would consume 25% of that 100%.
That's my understanding. I know there will be more questions regarding this, and I'm going to defer all of those questions to Rob Paulus.
Are we ready for Rob yet? Go ahead. Why don't you go ahead and finish, and we'll come back.
Okay. Water will be provided by East Green Acres Irrigation District, and they have the applicant has provided a will serve letter from the irrigation district. Looking at the existing and future traffic patterns, you can see that Prairie is a principal arterial, and Fisher is a minor collector, and Chase a minor arterial. So the existing road infrastructure has the capacity to handle additional traffic flows in this area. There have been several comments that were submitted by public regarding traffic and specifically Greencrest Way. Greencrest Way is an extension out of Arrowleaf Estates right here, and the Stockwell property is in the middle, and then you have Tranquil Meadows to the east. And this is Greencrest Way on Tranquil Meadows, and you can see that that extension has been designed to line up. Arrowleaf Estates was approved in 2019. Tranquil Meadows was approved and recorded in 2020. So this extension has been in the works, and it is in line with the city's master transportation plan. Here you can kind of see how that future connection lines up, and if this is Tranquil Meadows where the cursor is, if and when, I should say, this 5-acre lot annexes, Greencrest Way would be further extended and go north and connect into this road, which I'm not sure the name of at this moment. But this is the Quiet Ridge subdivision here. So Policy 33 kind of addresses that within the comprehensive plan. That is that annexations should help implement Post Falls transportation plans, enabling completion and preserving continuity of circulatory patterns for roads and pedestrian ways. Looking at the third zone change review criteria is that zoning is assigned following considerations such as items as street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic and natural features. I've touched on all of those except for the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer, which is the natural feature associated with the property. It should not hinder any development in any way. In fact, it should benefit the aquifer, or the annexation should benefit the aquifer as it gets a septic system off of the aquifer, and all that wastewater will be put to city sewer. The fourth review criteria looks at commercial and high-density residential zoning, and it's typically assigned along streets with higher road classification. Prairie Avenue is a principal arterial, and KMPO has called it out as a critical arterial corridor. It is, so it is a higher road classification, although commercial and high-density residential are less compatible with the existing uses of low-density residential in this area. And any commercial and high-density residential would be better suited at the intersection of Prairie and Chase, which is a commercial node as outlined in the comprehensive plan future land use map. Looking at the next review criteria, limited or neighborhood commercial and lower density residential zoning is typically assigned for properties as they proceed further away from higher intensity urban activity. Looking at the map, the dark red is existing high intensity urban activity areas, and the pink is areas that are currently developing out in that way. This area is not located in any of those areas. It's right here, again, where the cursor is, kind of on that northern portion of the city limits. And lastly, looking at industrial zoning that is typically assigned for properties with sufficient access to major transportation routes and may be situated away from residential zoning. That is not applicable. There's no industrial zoning within the vicinity. This is a list of the agencies that were routed and given a chance to comment. We had 3 agencies that did comment. Post Falls Police Department and Post Falls Highway District were both neutral. Department of Environmental Quality had comments that will be applicable at time of construction or development of the site. And to review, here's the list of the 6 zone change review criteria, and I can take questions.
How many approved yet undeveloped lots or parcels are still are out there that would use the Fisher sewer station? So you see what I'm saying? I'm trying to figure out if there's already some under construction that would use that other percentage. Do you
Let's
know that?
bring Mr. Paulus up.
Commissioners, Robert Paulus, Assistant City Engineer. To backtrack and give a little bit of history to get to the answer that you're looking for, the City of Post Falls over the last several months has been taking a look, and we hired a consultant to go into our sewer model to look at some potential annexations that would be northeast of Prairie and Idaho Street. And in doing that and running the sewer flows through our system, we found out that the Fisher lift station has some limited capacity. And when that limited capacity, that was taken into account, what projects have we annexed into the City of Post Falls and what is planned for development. So Tranquil Meadows, which isn't built out, Quiet Ridge, which is immediately to the east, which isn't built out but has structures starting. And there was a recent annexation immediately north of Tranquil Meadows. Those were taken into account in that model update. We also had in that model update, because we're looking at putting in a roundabout at Prairie Avenue and Spokane Street, at that same time we're taking 2 other lift stations offline and they are being routed towards the Fisher lift station. So that all of that combined brought us a little bit closer than we were anticipating to be at with the Fisher lift station. And So as a precautionary measure, we're in an area where a model is a model. It has some weighed ideas as far as how much does each house utilize for water each day, when do those toilets get flushed, and when do people take showers. So at some point, you have to go and say, these are based upon averages. We tried to calibrate the model as close as we can to real-life activity, but when you get close to those model results, you need to go out there into the field and get a real-life, what is the actual flow going into that lift station, and verify how close we are to its true capacity. We could potentially be a little bit closer than we anticipate, or we could be a little bit further away. At the current moment, from our discussions with Public Works, we are anticipating, and it is shown in our Water Reclamation Master Plan, that the Fisher Lift Station is to be updated in 2023. That would make that capacity available in about 2024. Does that affect annexation? That's a decision for you to make. It does, at this point, until we get those flows, it would impact the ability to subdivide that property, no matter what type of zoning it would get. We would be hesitant from an engineering perspective to give a recommendation of having that capacity available until we verify where we really are, and we can tell them, you can proceed today, or you may need to wait 1 or 2 years till 2024 until that capacity is available. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and so you're saying that will be addressed more thoroughly in the permitting process?
Even ahead of the permitting process for subdivision,
Okay.
we've already made the request to our Public Works Department to go out there and get that flow data. I wish I could have had it sooner for this meeting, but that was not possible. If it is annexed and they move forward to a subdivision, before they even make that application for subdivision, we will have that answer for the applicant. And so staff will be comfortable as where we're at, and also being able to double check our finances as far as, that we are going to be moving forward on 2023 with construction.
Okay, thank you. That completely answers my question.
You're welcome.
And again, just to make sure that we stress, this is simply a recommendation of the basic density if it was to be annexed in by the city. So we're very, very early on. Other questions?
Well, it's a recommendation on zoning.
Yes.
Yeah. So 2 questions. One has to do with sewer. So Grayling Estates lift station would come offline with the roundabout. Would it be possible to not take Prairie Falls 2 offline until the new lift station was upgraded?
That is a potential. I mean, right now, we are moving towards taking the Prairie Falls 2 lift station offline as well. That could impact some of our costing as to when we do things, but that, if we came back and said, hey, this is where we're at, that's a question that we need to talk about at a staff level as to whether or not we'd be willing to consider the costs of delaying removing Prairie Falls 2.
Okay. And the second question I have, with city's access, or with the KMPO access policy to Prairie Avenue being what it is, how many more residential streets are allowed in this stretch of Prairie between Fisher and Chase?
So the KMPO Critical Arterial Corridor Policy allows for a controlled intersection, that being a roundabout or traffic signal on a half-mile spacing. So utilizing the Chase Road intersection, the next controlled intersection at a half-mile is Howell Road.
Okay.
And then the city's access control policy would allow spacing on a principal arterial, which is Prairie Avenue, on a quarter-mile spacing. So the one access point at Tranquil Meadows is the only access point that we would allow between Chase and Howell.
So no more access points from the south between Chase and Howell?
That is correct.
Okay.
Other questions? None? Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Anything else to add?
No, he
All
covered
right.
it.
I would
Okay.
just ask Laura,
Oh.
Laura, without speculating on future applications, future hearings, anything else, right now, if these people annex into our city, what are they allowed to do with the lot?
Right now, they can keep it as a single-family residence.
Okay, so that's really what's appropriate to talk about right now.
And staff has reached out to all parties affiliated with the property to make them aware of this Fisher lift station issue, and they have decided to move forward with the annexation until we get the results back of that flow test capacity. So it's really in their hands on, depending on the results, how they want to move forward.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Not quite okay?
I just wanted to follow up on the issue with the sewer. We are going to try to see if we can't have that answer prior to this getting to city council.
Okay, good point, thank you. Applicant.
Chuck Hughes, 2172 West Hall Loop, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Let's see. Well, as you've heard, this is an infill subdivision, and this is my first time in front of you folks, so not really sure how this works, but as an infill subdivision, we've got 18 lots planned in here. We've got an existing home in there, and the existing home is going to be hooked into sewer. It has a driveway going out to Prairie Avenue, and that driveway will disappear. And Greencrest Way, let me see if I can go right here, will be our access point, to and from. Getting over to Arrowleaf Loop, comes around here, and then over to Tranquil Meadows, to get out to Prairie. So we have a cul-de-sac on this end, and okay, the sewer can go either way, down this way or this way, and as you heard, we're working through the sewer issue. It's pretty simple infill subdivision. We've met all the requirements, and I'm just open for questions.
Okay. Questions at all for the applicant? No? No. Okay. All right, sir. Thank you very much. Public comment. Those in favor?
None.
Those neutral?
None.
Those opposed? And sir, as the applicant, just so you know, after this, you will have an opportunity to come up if there's anything that you want to specifically discuss. In opposition, wishing to speak, Lynn, is it Wainlert? I apologize. If I butcher your guys' names, it is not on purpose. That's why we give you an opportunity to state your name and your address, so we always have it right.
Okay, my name is Lynn Wailert. I live at 3746 North Foxdale Road. I'm on the board at the Meadow Ridge Homeowners Association, and we're just here. I'm being on the board. The people have called me, and they're very, very concerned about the density of this. You got a lot of lots on a small piece of property. It's not conforming with what we have at this time. We just want to be made that you're made aware of that. Okay.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. In opposition, wishing to speak, Paul, is it Sanding?
Hi, I'm Paul Sandvig. I live at 3803 North Arrowleaf Loop, and I live right there. And I'm very concerned that this Westwood, this little lane here will come across our green space in our subdivision. This is all green space, and basically intersect Arrowleaf right across from my front door. I don't really know why we need an entrance into Arrowleaf there. They're gonna have a cul-de-sac up here. The gentleman is right, they do have a driveway into Prairie now, that will go away. There's going to be a cul-de-sac right here, and then this road that goes across our green space right across from my house into there. I don't understand, maybe there could be a cul-de-sac down here, because then you go out to Prairie. But to have that intersection basically, I'd say 100 feet from, what happened here? From Hydrilia is the street that's on the very south there, and another intersection 100 feet there. The traffic and noise, it just doesn't make sense when maybe you could put a cul-de-sac in right here instead of have that street come across, that green space right across from my house.
Okay, thank you. Duly noted. I appreciate that. Also in opposition, wishing to speak, David Miles.
Good afternoon, David Miles, 1311 West Watercress Avenue. And I'm a homeowner in the adjacent subdivision there. And when Tranquil Meadows and Quiet Ridge, they came to us as a homeowners association and wanted to join our HOA. Not so much to be a part of the HOA, but it gave us the opportunity to have a little bit of say in what they developed there. And so those two subdivisions conform to what our standards are with lot size, house style, that kind of thing. So we're looking at about 12 homes on the same 5-acre parcels in those two adjacent properties, and then this one is going up to 18 or 19. So that's a huge increase in traffic. And also, I mean, you've got this thing going in between all these other homes, and the whole area are one style, the Craftsman style, with minimum lot sizes and stuff like that. And now you're going to put some more high density in there. So I'm opposed to it. I am not opposed to the development. It's all going to happen. We're not going to be able to stop that. But I would like to see something more. I mean, I know the zone 1 gives them the right to do whatever they want, but it would be nice if we had some kind of an agreement that would allow them to conform to kind of what we have in the area, because I mean, we kind of like what we got, and it's like putting an apartment complex next door. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to invite the applicant back up if there's anything specific needing to address.
Yeah, I'll address Greencrest Way, first, this road right here. This meets the KMCO transportation plan, and the idea of just stopping it here really doesn't work for us. We've extended, the road is already right here, extended, and then it just needs to go across the green space here, to go out. And in terms of density, we're 3.6 houses, per acre, and it's 18 lots with one existing home right here, and you can go to 20 lots. So it's not really high density. It's less density where it's a little more dense than here with 12 lots, and about the same as on this west side. So it's like a transitional piece, between here and Arrowleaf over here.
Okay. Any other questions for applicant before he sits?
Yeah, I have a question on when they were talking about the road. So you're running a road across the bottom, right? Is that what you're saying? And you're coming across. Somebody was talking about coming across green space, their green space.
there.
How is that working?
Yeah, right here. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if that's their, yeah.
Yeah, their house is sitting right here, I believe.
But the green space that they're talking about, is that part of their development?
It's
Yes.
currently
Yes,
right
it
away.
is.
It's a right of way? Okay.
When they did that,
okay.
they dedicated it as right away. So it's
Okay.
currently right away that's planned to extend easterly
Okay.
to Greencast.
Okay.
It does look like at this point in time it's part of the open green space, but it was reserved for future connectivity.
So it was right away, they just didn't build the street there?
At this time,
Okay.
knowing that future, and that's why it was placed about 120 feet from the southern limits, is that's the average lot depth for houses. So knowing that as it grew to the, or expanded to the east, it would work.
Okay.
So John, oh, I guess I can ask you later, right?
Okay.
You want me to- Oh, well, is the intent is to connect at some point possibly to that West Pickerel or Avenue, so the one that's, I guess,
Yeah,
east,
if
right?
Laura wants to pull up that street connectivity slide, that kind of shows how it was foreseen to kind of create interconnectivity and meet all of the spacing standards that Rob mentioned, and have good fire access as well.
Okay, so, yeah, going kind of all the way over there. Okay, got it.
Okay.
Up to cord grass.
Yep, okay, I see.
Do we have some additional comment? Okay.
My name is Jeremiah Steckman. I'm the owner of Axiom Homes, and we are the proposed builder for this site. I think a couple of things that I wanted to mention. Arrowleaf Estates was approved with this connector anticipated. So Greencrest Way is a connector. With respect to the gentleman, I very much understand the concerns there. However, that was conditional when that lot was developed. So that really is a non-issue we're consistent with, and really, if it was up to us, we wouldn't be adding that. There's no benefit to us in connecting it, other than it's consistent with the traffic plan that you guys have asked for. So it's that was anticipated and always been a part of the development there, and that will be going through at some time, regardless of whether it's regardless of use. With respect to the issues that are brought up here today, the real concern with the sewer is a future concern, and we are very much understanding that we need to resolve that, and are working closely with Rob and staff to ensure that we have capacity to do that. The real question before you today is a zoning question, and those other questions and concerns that have been brought are really things that we will have to discuss at a future date, and there's an appropriate forum to do that. So with respect to that, we're asking for a question on zoning and an opinion on that.
Right. Duly noted. Any other questions?
No.
Nope. All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Any other questions for Rob? Anyone else? Field? Put some pressure on him.
I think, can I ask one other thing? So the properties around it that are, well, as I see in my little map, they're all the low density, they're RS1, but they have, so obviously they're not RS1. I mean, they're an RS1 zone, but they got some kind of an exception to be smaller, or?
Yes, they were approved for a PUD at the time of development.
Okay, so they're actually a PUD.
Correct.
Okay, and that's how they got the smaller ones, but that's how they got them smaller, but they're still larger than
R1.
an R1 would be. Okay, I understand now. Got it, thank you.
Yeah, and that's actually why our PUD language we currently have is to match the underlying zone with the PUD. This is a good example. This was an older philosophy with PUD. You would zone it one thing, then the applicant would later then come by and propose some sort of density and look and smell like an R1. So both the Craftsman at Meadow Ridge to the south and the one on Howell don't come near the size limitations of an 1 acre lot of an R1S, and they're actually more closer resemblance of an R1 subdivision.
Right, okay,
And
okay,
so if those were to come in today, everything north of Fisher would be R1.
okay.
And I believe everything in the Craftsman at Meadow Ridge is approximately 1/3 of an acre, and everything in Arrowleaf Estates is slightly smaller. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? None? Then I'll close out the hearing. Open it up for comment. Anybody want to start? Nancy?
Well,
Ross snuck back.
I understand the concerns, and I understand the concerns with the street coming right out into somebody's, front living room window. But it looks like it was pretty much always designed that way. And I think no matter what happens there, even if the lots were a little bit larger, I think we're still gonna have that street issue there. I don't see any way around that right now. I think the big question mark is gonna be with that sewer lift station and whether it's going to be to accommodate it. And I think that's probably my biggest issue, but it's not an issue for today. So with that said, I think R1 maybe isn't completely ideal, but it is a pretty good fit.
Ross?
Yeah, I think that most everything everybody here is concerned about are issues for a future subdivision application, and rightfully so. And I encourage them to talk to their neighbors here and try to agree on a plan that enhances the existing neighborhood. But as far as today's question, what zone would we recommend if the city council annexes this property in? I think it's R1.
Ray?
Yeah, I think this is a subdivision that's sandwiched between, on the east, it's got an R1 zoning, and on the west, it's got an R1S zoning with an R1 subdivision, essentially, there, so it's a PUD. But I think all those lots were in that 7,000 or 8,000 square foot range. They weren't very big. And if you look at the R1S subdivision to the west versus the R1 subdivision to the east, you can see which lots are bigger. So the question is either R1S or R1, and I think having it sandwiched between R1 type subdivisions, R1 just makes sense.
Vicky?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much all been said. I mean, it fits in with what's around in the neighborhood as far as the zoning, and that's what we're here to make a decision on.
James?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, it's R1 fits out there. The streets will come in, the connectivity will come in, and we've seen this with other developments in the area where you have the future streets already mapped out years in advance. And then the sewer question, it seems like that one is on top of mind and will be figured out in due time.
Having moved into a subdivision years and years ago and been one of the first houses, I appreciate the fact that, there's green space, there's room to roam, but the understanding is that it was going to grow. And unfortunately, with the road, I think as it was already discussed, it was already in the plans regardless of how we move forward with the zone recommendation. But I do think that R1 is a good fit if council determines that they want to annex that in. So that would be my recommendation as well. So I would look for a motion at this time.
Oh, okay, I will. All right. I move to recommend approval of Stockwell Annexation ANNX-0011-2021, finding that it meets the approval criteria in the Post Falls Municipal Code, with direct staff to prepare a reasoned decision with R1 zoning.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, call for vote.
Hamby,
Yes.
Schlauer,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Stephenson.
Yes.
All right. Next item on the agenda this evening, administrative staff reports.
None.
None. Next up, commissioner comments. Anything to share? Anyone? No? No, it's not.
Oh,
I thought about mentioning that.
Let's not
I decided no.
talk about winter as we're in the middle of fall. All right. If there's nothing else, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.